Hey everybody, we are reading Dune and we are on to the 12th chapter, which is a long chapter, probably the longest chapter that we've had so far. And it is very juicy with great details and intrigue and the strategies that the Atreides are attempting to form in order to try to survive this ordeal in taking over Arrakis. So it starts off with the Duke Leto and Paul, and they've just been discussing the Hunter-Seeker attack on Paul, and the Duke is trying to come to terms with how it could have happened, all of the precautions that they've taken. He's mad at Thufir, but Paul defends him, and he points out that he's alive largely because of his training, and Thufir has always been a big part of that. And the Duke realizes that Paul is right. Thufir comes in and he's ready to resign. He knows that he's messed up, but the Duke has already changed his mind and is like, I'm not going to hear any more about that. I need you now more than ever. So he doesn't let Thufir quit, and he says, look, if anything, we've been overthinking it. He says the Harkonnens used a simple, stupid tactic to try to kill it, and we just were thinking on a higher level. We forgot who we were dealing with. And so Thufir, he's a little bit sheepish, but he realizes that the Duke is right, and he definitely can still contribute to it. And so they kick off a larger strategy meeting, and Gurney joins them as well as a lot of other lieutenants and aides. And they're talking about a number of things that they are dealing with in order to try to stave off disaster and hopefully eventually make a profit. So they are talking about a number of things. One of them is the Fremen, and by all accounts, there are a lot more Fremen on the planet than the Harkonnen or the Imperium ever knew. And Thufir is getting more and more information that helps to validate that suspicion. And it's clear that Duke Leto is wanting to leverage that as quickly as possible because he knows that the Emperor is going to send Sardaukar, and he says they're going to be disguised as Harkonnens. They're going to come down here with the intention of wiping us out, and so he knows that this is coming. But he thinks if they can get 5 battalions of Fremen warriors, then they can win that fight, and then maybe even have some captured Sardaukar that they can parade before the Landsrat, and that'll really shake things up. And really what's going on in this chapter is that the Atreides are not helpless, they're not dumb, they know they've walked into a trap, they know the extent of what is potentially going to happen, but this chapter is all about them trying to find ways to deal with it. And Paul notices that at the beginning of the chapter, like everybody is tense and nervous, and a lot of it's about the attack that just happened on him. It's very late, and everyone is tired as well. But Duke Leto manages to cut the tension and get everybody focused right away with just the right amount of humor and insight and trying to get things going. But as the meeting progresses, that energy starts to seep out, and the chapter ends with Paul realizing that it didn't end on a high. It kind of fizzled out, and he's worried that is an indicator of how things are going to play out. Now, there's a lot more that goes on in it. They get a brief about the state of the equipment. So by the rules of the judge of the change and the change in fief rule, the Harkonnens were supposed to leave a certain amount of equipment behind, and they did, but it's all garbage, and hardly anything works. A lot of it is, if it does work, it's not going to be working in a couple of months. And they find out that from Thufir that they have been earning billions and billions of solaris, which are their dollars in the Dune universe. They've just been raking it in, and the Duke is like, does anyone think for a second that the Harkonnens are just going to walk away from that amount of profit? And everybody's like, yeah, we get it. They're not going to give this up without a fight. There's going to be a fight. And on top of that, the Atreides have got to figure out a way to earn money. But it's clear because of the state of things that they are not going to be turning much of a profit at all for quite some time, because they've got to invest in infrastructure, and they've got to try to retain good workers and attract good workers, and they know they're going to have to pay for that as well. The other thing that they know about is that there's a lot of smugglers on Arrakis, and they've been smuggling spice out. But the Duke is like, you know what? Let's make a deal with them that they can continue to smuggle, but they have to pay like a little tax. And Gurney's like, the Emperor is going to freak out about that. And the Duke is like, we're going to make that tax public, and so that everything is legal. And they're like, oh yeah, the Baron is going to hate that, Baron Harkonnen. So they've got some good ideas, they've got some good plans. And in the middle of all of this, Duncan Idaho shows up. And they caught, Duncan was with some Fremen, they caught some Harkonnens who were trying to sneak around disguised as Fremen, and they killed them all. But one of the Fremen warriors was mortally wounded, and Duncan tried everything he could to save him, but he died. And he has that guy's crysknife, and he's about to show it to the Duke when Stilgar appears, and he has been accompanying Duncan, and he's like, don't take that knife out of its sheath, and because it's sacred to us. And he and the Duke have this great moment where they're realizing, okay, the Duke realizes this is the kind of guy I've got to win over as an ally. So I'm definitely going to respect his customs, and I'm going to make it clear to him how the Atreides revere the locals, and they're not going to step on their traditions and beliefs. And so he's like, that's fine. And Duncan Idaho says, well, look, the Fremen want me to join them, and Duncan and the Duke both know that he needs to still remain part of House Atreides, and so they ask Stilgar if it's cool that Duncan is basically loyal to both the Fremen and the Atreides, and Stilgar is like, that's fine because there's a precedent for it. Liet serves two masters, and they've talked earlier about who is this Liet. They're not sure if Liet is a person or a deity. And they know that the Fremen hold Liet in very high regard, which is why they think maybe it's not even a real person, it's a deity or something like that. But after the meeting, they're starting to think maybe it is somebody, and they'll need to get to the bottom of that. But yes, the scene with Stilgar, and this is a scene where Stilgar spits on the table, and everyone's about to freak out when Duncan interrupts and says, he reminds them, you know how precious water is to the Fremen. This is actually a sign of respect. And I always just absolutely love this scene. It makes perfect sense after you think about it for a second. And the reaction is also a perfect sense. We're so used to that idea. If you'd spit on somebody's table, that's a big deal. But then when you realize, well, these are people that they don't even cry for the people that they love who have died, because that's a waste of water. You realize, yeah, that is a huge sign of respect. And so I always loved this part of the book, and I was very happy to see it portrayed in the Villeneuve movie. It's a great second. It was a cut scene for the Lynch movie, so it didn't make it in there. But yeah, and it is in the miniseries too. So I like that. In the adaptations, they recognize the importance of the scene and just the impact that it has. And so Duncan goes off with Stilgar, and he knows that he is an ambassador, and he's going to help try to win them over to the point where they will agree to fight with the Atreides against the Harkonnens and the Sardaukar when and if they show up. But again, the last thing that they're talking about is they know that there's all these ecological testing stations that were built way back when. But once spice was discovered, the whole let's change this planet and terraform it sort of thing was shuttered. And they're thinking, the Duke is like, all the equipment that we need to repair all of these harvesters and carryalls and spice mining equipment could be right there, especially if it's in good shape. But Thufir and some of the others are like, the Fremen might really think that it's taboo to just burst in there and take all that stuff. And that's got to be the bigger priority, is winning the Fremen over. And then the secondary is making money. And the Duke reluctantly agrees. But part of that, it was started to get into a heated debate, and Paul sided with everybody else against his father, and not in a harsh way, but enough that Paul felt like that's when the energy in the room kind of went away, and the meeting, it was rah-rah for a while, but then it just kind of was like, ugh, the stark reality of we're outnumbered and we're poor. So he's kind of setting in there. So I think it's a great chapter. Like I said, it's a long chapter, and it really gets into the economy of how things work on Arrakis, how it affects not only the Atreides, but the Imperium at large. They're mining the spice, and it's got to get out off the planet, and how just critical it is to everything that's going on, as well as this impending doom that they know it's coming. They know the Sardaukar attack with the Harkonnen is almost certainly going to happen. They don't know how quickly it will happen, but they know they don't have a lot of time to really harness what Duke Leto calls desert power. And it's desert power is it's part of it is the Fremen, and part of it is understanding how to really leverage everything that's there and try to continue to make money. He's really freaked out about the fact that there's just no shields anywhere. Nobody uses shields on Arrakis, and it's because Thufir says that Duncan has reported to them that you put a shield on in the desert, and every worm for miles around will come in a killing frenzy, and so like only a couple of the ornithopters in their fleet are shielded. They don't use shields out of the desert. It seemed like the Harkonnens were using shields, but that the Fremen were kind of laughing about it, and that's because the Fremen are just such good warriors that they're not worried about somebody with a shield. So that's what happens in this chapter. A lot of really interesting stuff. Some great quotes from Gurney Halleck as he quotes songs and verses of the Orange Catholic Bible, and you get a real sense of more of a sense of how Thufir is involved in all of the plotting and strategy that goes on, not just the accounting, and the importance of Duncan as an ambassador to the Fremen and how that's going to play out. So let me know your thoughts on this chapter. I love it. I think it's a great chapter. It's one of those things that as a first-time reader, you're getting some hope for the Atreides being able to outsmart the Harkonnen. And it's not just going to be a walkover. Paul and the Duke do talk about the traitor, but they don't open it up to the wider group, not in that meeting. The Duke is like, I'm going to talk with Thufir more about stuff, and that's the implication, is that they'll get into that as well. But so it's great tension. As a reader, we know that there's a traitor. We know that the Baron is planning something big, and that the Emperor is backing it. But the Atreides know this as well. So they know that there's a traitor, or at least they suspect that might be true. They know that an attack is imminent. And so they're taking those steps. So it's helping to see how things are going to play out, and just adding to that tension. So let me know your thoughts and comments, any questions that you have, and we'll keep reading. And thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.